Hello Gambia, your television experience is about to be transformed to the next level. Enjoy amazing features with the new DTT decoder by XCAF. Watch television in high definition and excellent sound quality. Watch Gambian channels such as GRTS, QTV, Star TV, Paradise TV and MTA with one decoder, all for free. That's not all. For a monthly subscription of $510, you get 60 international channels from your favorite football leagues, news, African movies, telenovelas, cartoons and much more. Get the decoder for $2,040, which comes with free installation, 24/7 customer and technical support all year round, and 1 month free subscription for only $510 thereafter. Get the decoder at XCAF Gambia, located at Hendon Court Building, former Dream Park, Senegambia, or through approved dealers. For more info, call 446-1060 or 446-1061. The world is at your fingertips with the XCAF DTD decoder.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. During online TV viewers, welcome to another edition of our daily COVID-19 update. And today I have an important guest, an environmentalist by name Famara. I think Famara is a familiar face to Banjul online TV. Famara, welcome to our weekly environmental show. Hello, Famara, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Ahmed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So, Famara will be discussing coastal adaptation to climate change in the Gambia. This is a very, very big challenge. Yeah, thank you, Buma. How are you? Yeah, so Famara, first of all, I will let Famara introduce himself, then I will introduce myself briefly. Famara, introduce yourself to viewers of Banjul Online TV.
Thank you so much, Ahmed. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Famara Drammeh. I'm originally from Brufut, but currently based in the United States. I had experience working for the government of the Gambia for 20 years. I worked with the Department of Parks and Wildlife for 15, and then the National Environment Agency for 5 years. During those years that I served the government, I had the opportunity to travel to Tanzania, where I did my diploma, and then I went to United States, United Kingdom first, where I did my master's degree on biodiversity and conservation at the University of Surrey in Roehampton in southwest London. And then in the United States here, I did another master's degree on emergency and disaster management at the American Public University. So during those days, I also had the opportunity to travel around the world. I've been to several countries in Africa, and I've also been to the Asia, and then I've been to many parts in the Europe, undergoing some studies and short courses on climate change, biodiversity conservation, and other environmental issues. So Ahmed, in brief, that's Famara.
Yeah, thank you very much, Famara, for that brilliant introduction. So viewers, as you can see, Famara is well qualified. In fact, any other platform but here, he will be paid, to present. So we are getting this brilliant opportunity that Famara will be sharing his vast experience about environment, especially Gambia's resilience to coastal adaptation. So I am Ahmed Manja. I'm your host. I'm a microbiologist by training, but I'm very passionate about the environment. So this is a weekly, so every Tuesday this time we will be here discussing different topic about environment. In fact, I'm happy to tell you that next week this time, Lamin Tamba will be our presenter. The same panel, Omar might join us today, but Lamin Tamba also will become a regular here. He will discuss about issues, challenges facing us as far as solid waste disposal is concerned. This is a very big problem in the Gambia. So, Famara, welcome. Coastal adaptation to climate change.
Mm-hmm.
You know, yeah, you can proceed.
Thank you. Okay, good. Just like the topic just said, coastal adaptation to climate change. So basically, um, let me just take on this one. Okay, so that's the topic. Yeah,
one of your screens.
Yeah,
One of your screens you have to connect.
yeah, that's right. Okay, I think that's gone. Okay, hold on.
So, but if you are also on Facebook, if you open it on Facebook, you need to close that as well.
Okay, cool. Let me just close down all of them.
Yeah. If you are on Facebook, you can say it on Facebook on your timeline though before you start. That would be great.
Okay.
So while Famara,
that's all done now.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Let's see.
So next slide. That's the topic for discussion: coastal adaptation to climate change in the Gambia. So in this presentation, I'll be talking briefly about what climate change is and what are the causes of climate change, the expected impacts of climate change. And of course, we'll also talk about climate change and potential impact on coastal ecosystem. And then I'll also briefly talk about the climate change in the Gambia coastal zone. And of course, the strategies to adapt and what sort of implementation strategies that we need to also consider in the Gambia, and then we'll go into conclusions and recommendations. Next slide. So typically, this is the so most of the viewers know Gambia. I know you have some people that view sometimes outside that are non-Gambians, but just to give you a location of the Gambia or the map of the Gambia, you all see it's a small country, divided between Senegal and both the other sides apart from the Atlantic Ocean. So that's pretty much that's the location of the Gambia. So we'll be talking about coastal adaptation mainly on this Atlantic area and other parts of the coastal area. Next slide. So given the national circumstances of the Gambia, we all know Gambia, we do have a rainfall, especially this time of the year, between June and October or September it is, and or sometimes May, because that's what it's actually be. So the temperatures are usually very hot in the Gambia, you all know. The humidity in the coastline is also, and the population right now is about 1.2 million, which of course majority resides in the rural area, and then of course the urban area. And we also have a very youthful population. According to statistics, about 60% of our populations are youth, which is like below 25 years of old. Now, when it comes to the climate sensitivity, we have major economic areas are agriculture, and we also have tourism, and then we have forestry, water resources. These are all the major income in general. And we are red-fed agriculture. Our agriculture mainly depends on red-fed, which employs about 80% of the labor force and then also accounts about 25% of our GDP. Next slide. So what is climate change? The climate and the climate change is two different things, but they're more related. So when we talk about climate, essentially we're talking about the average meteorological condition in a certain area over a given period of time, usually a long period of time for that matter. And this also includes the conditions of the temperature, the precipitation and other conditions, weather conditions. So when we talk about climate change, basically we're talking about, therefore, the change in temperature or the precipitation of a general weather patterns over a long period of time. According to scientists, to determine a climate change in a particular country or so, it will take periodically like up to 30 years to know whether climate has impacted an area or not. So when you're doing any study or anything related to climate change, it will have to be on a period of long time, which is usually over 30 years. Next slide. So when you talk about climate change or when you talk about coastal issues, sometimes there are key, especially with relation to the topic of discussion today. There are key definitions that you really want to be familiar with, because when you talk about climate change, you always talk about vulnerability, which obviously according to Timmerman 81, the vulnerability is as a degree to which a system reacts to adversely to the occurrence of a hazardous event. And then adaptation, which obviously, according to IPCC, which is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, refers to the adjustment in natural system or in a human activity in response to an actual or predicted climate change impact. And of course, hazards, according to Wikipedia, is a situation that poses a level of threat to life, property, and the environment. So these are very familiar terminologies that we usually refer to when we're talking about climate change issues. Next slide. Right, the causes of climate change. Of course, there are two causes of climate change, which is obviously natural changes and the human causes. But most of the blame, according to the scientists around the world, and based on the overwhelmingly body of evidences that scientists collect, while doing research on climate, they found out that majority of the blame of climate change is due to burning of the fossil fuel, as we see in the industrialized countries like the United States, China, and then India. They actually depend on burning of the fossil fuels for the source of energy. And then, of course, in clearance of vegetation, which we see happening in most part of the world, especially in the developing country like the Gambia and other parts of Africa, we're seeing that clearing of our vegetation, either for agriculture or either for logging or either settlement like we've seen in Gambia now. A lot of these real estate companies are clearing our vegetation. They are now going into areas that are already woodland areas. The real estate companies are buying land from the communities, but they don't put into consideration the vegetation that exists in those lands they bought. So instead of following the regular environmental procedure, and they will just go ahead and clear all the vegetation, forgetting that this vegetation cover is part of our national vegetation cover of the country. So once we clear all these woodlands, then obviously we are actually contributing to climate change, because we all know the relationship between climate and then trees, because trees are very good in absorbing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. So when you clear a vegetation, obviously you are now exposing that area to the impact of climate change, which is the temperature. So bushfires we also see is happening a lot in the Gambia, especially in the dry season. If you go to URR, if you go to Central River Division, you go to LRR, which is one of the hotspots for bushfire, because in the Cairns and the Fonies, the number of bushfires we encounter in a year is far too much compared to West Coast region. But CRR also is also having a lot of bushfire problems compared to URR. So obviously bushfire is also one of the issues that contributes to climate change, because imagine when a whole vegetation is burned down, the heat that goes up in the atmosphere is actually making the ozone layer very vulnerable to the impact of climate change. Next slide. So climate change projection in the Gambia, studies have seen that over the past 40 years, the country has experienced decline in total rainfall. And we've all seen that in the past few years, where communities actually experiencing crop failure. And this is because we don't have enough rainfall in the country. And then also research have also shown that in the 1960s, there is a change in the climate observed in the Gambia. And this is also erratic rainfalls, unseasonal rainfalls, torrential rainfalls. Like we see a couple of years ago, Banjul was flooded, Serekunda was flooded. Some parts of the towns in the Gambia were all flooded. So this is all part of the impact of climate change and the climate projections. Next slide. Right, so the climate change projection in the Gambia, just to continue again, based on research, different scenarios were used to assess the vulnerability study of the coastal zone of the Gambia to sea level rise, for example. And then also we have researchers and then experts in the Gambia in climate area has conducted vulnerability study of the coastline of the Gambia to the impact of climate change that has been done. And then based on those studies that have been done, they predicted that 1 meter sea level rise in the Gambia will lead to inundation about 892 kilometer squares of the coastline or the coastal zone of the Gambia. And this has been estimated that over 50%, which is like 47 kilometer square of the land lost to inundation will come from sheltered coastline, which is the settlements around the coastline. Next slide. So this is a study that was done on the vulnerability study of our capital city, which was the Banjul, to the impact of climate change, which obviously specifically the sea level rise. As you can see on the map, and some areas of Banjul are 2.0. That's mean 2 meters above sea level, below sea level, and the others are 1.5. So we go to other areas are 1.0. The other areas are 0.5. So 0.5, the 1.0, 2.0. So areas that are 0.5, these areas are very vulnerable to the impact of sea level rise. This means any potential rainfall that we have. If we have more rainfall than we expect, or maybe a sea level rise increased by one meter, then these areas in Banjul that are 0.5, and even those with 1 meter exactly, are going to be very vulnerable to the impact of climate change, because the sea level rise, the ozone water, and the inundation will be affecting the capital city. So this means that some of our houses, our major government buildings, our infrastructures, and of course the cemeteries and along the Banjul, all the major facilities that we have and infrastructures we have in Banjul are going to be affected, including our ports, because the ports is one of those, yeah, they're very vulnerable. You can see sometimes when the sea level is high, in fact, even the ferry is even struggling to actually dock properly. You can see that. And then for several reasons, ports have made some interventions, to make a barrier in case the sea level goes up, so that the water doesn't splash over. But if you go to Bond Road, for example, when the sea level is high, sometimes the water, back in the days when I was going to Muslim high school, some days you can see the water is even splashing over the main road to the mangrove ecosystem, because the other side is actually, the sea level is gone up. So this is exactly what is happening to Banjul. But thank God, Banjul is surrounded by a mangrove ecosystem. This is actually protecting the capital city that most people don't know. And this is what we call the green infrastructure. So this mangrove ecosystem around Bond Road in Banjul is protecting our capital city a lot, because a lot of the inundation that is coming in as a rainfall or either rise, it's all been contained in those mangrove ecosystems. So that's one of the importance of this mangrove ecosystem in those areas. And recently we have seen those mangrove ecosystem, especially on the other side of Banjul, on Bond Road, the mangroves are dying. They're actually dying out. We don't actually did a proper study to know why the mangroves are dying. Is it due to pollution, or is it low fresh water? Because the mangroves survive in a brackish water. So
yeah,
too much water.
Can I interject there?
Yeah, come on.
Yeah, if maybe you don't use you don't ask for lift when you are at Muslim high school, but why those mangroves are dying even at that school level is very easy to tell. There are a lot of mechanic shops around that end,
Right.
where they repair these old cars,
Right.
and you can see oil spill is visible.
Absolutely.
So I think too much oil spill in that particular area is killing the mangroves.
Absolutely.
You cannot miss it. So this is something people have to be very, very careful. And as you said, sometimes, in fact, the water pass over the tar road, over the road to the other side. So it's very visible. I'm really worried. So 0.5 and 1 is like, when there is 1 meter rise, like half of Banjul will go underwater, looking at the videos.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is worrying.
Yeah. So that's the thing is, unless we do a research on why mangroves are dying in Banjul, because you need to do a research to find out. But obviously, we cannot rule out pollution because the area is polluted, and then the sewage water coming from Banjul. We have seen some of the drainage in Tobacco roads being empty in that wetland ecosystem. They don't have a proper sewage facility, so all the sewages are being channeled into that wetland ecosystem, which obviously is going to kill the mangroves. And then the oil pollution you are saying, because some of the mechanic garages are around those areas, and then they empty their oil or the waste oil into the ecosystem. So that will actually also impact the vegetation. So the next slide. So the expected impact of climate change, the main effects, the heating of the atmosphere, which we all know, if we drive too much vehicles, we are emitting too much carbon dioxide, or maybe we are putting down bushfires, too much bushfires. So all of those heat that goes in the atmosphere is actually going to weaken the ozone layer. And when the ozone layer is weakened, what happens is the sun rays, the heat coming from the sun, is coming directly on us. It's coming directly on the ecosystem. It's coming directly on the soil. So that means the nutrient content in the soil will be dry out, and then the plants that cannot tolerate too much heat will also die. Even the human beings that we cannot tolerate too much heat will have to do some adaptation measures. Either we plant more trees to adapt to the environment, or maybe we'll have to put on our ACs too much lot, or we have to put on our fans a lot. So it's going to be the heating of the atmosphere. And also, when we talk about climate change impacts, we're also in two folds. One is the change in average weather around the world, which is called the so-called slow onset changes, which includes the sea level rise, and the change in rainfall temperature, and then also more temperature and flooding in the during the rains, and also increase in the hot days, like I said. Next slide. So the other changes is the changes in occurrence of extreme events, which includes increase in intensity of rainfall, the flash floods, like we've seen in the Gambia. In the URR, for example, they had a major flood last year and the last 2 years, especially in Kuntawur, where there was a major flood in 2018, where we see politicians like Mama Kande was able to respond while the government of the Gambia was still debating what to do. So those flash floods are actually happening, and they will continue to happen because our people are settling in areas that are not meant for settlement. And then water will definitely find a way out. A water will always find a water way to go out. But it doesn't matter whether people are settling in those areas or whatever is there. When there is too much water, the water will find its way out. So unfortunately, some of the communities that settle in the wrong areas will be impacted by this flash flood. Also, there will be a likely increase in frequency of extreme temperatures, which obviously I already mentioned, and an increase in the intensity of tropical cyclones, which obviously, with all these windstorms coming in the Gambia, last year we have seen it, and at the beginning of this year also we have seen it in URR, which is more affected by windstorm because the vegetation cover is gone. These poor people are living in a very poor houses, not even a cement house, but they are mud houses. And these mud houses are not properly constructed. They are not even tied down to hold the structure properly. So when a windstorm happens in the rainy season, unfortunately, these communities will be impacted. Their houses will be blown off. The roof houses will be blown off, exposing them to more, impact of climate change. Next slide. So the potential impact, like I said, of the hazards, manifestation of climate change in the coastal area, the sea level rise, obviously we all know. When there is too much temperature, when the area gets too much hot or the country gets too much hot, what happens is the ozone, the seawater, they're actually good in controlling climate. So all the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, the seawater, the ozone, it actually absorb the carbon dioxide from atmosphere. And then this leads to siltation, or not accidental, but acidification of the ozone. But also when the water gets warm up, it also, the level of the sea also increase. And this is what we see happening in the Gambia. When you have too much erosion happening in some areas because the sea level has impacted on our coastline, and then areas that were sandy beaches before are now becoming eroded. So also the increase in surface temperature and air temperature, like I said, the air temperature when it's very hot, and you don't feel that cool breeziness anymore, and the place will become too much hot. The climate variability, of course, I talk about the rainfall intensity and of course the landfall, erratic rainfalls. And then the other potential is the submerged beaches. Like I said, some of the beach areas will be submerged. The areas that used to be sandy beaches will be submerged. And then the flooding, we talked about that too, either this in the capital areas or either on the other areas. And then damage to the ecosystem, like the mangrove ecosystem, like we've seen in the Banjul Bone Road area, and also in the Cape Point. Also, there are mangroves who have been degraded. Those ecosystems are all degraded. And then the fish contamination. We also see the contamination of the fish. We have seen too much mosquitoes in Denton Bridge. There are a lot of fish that died in Denton Bridge some years back. And also we've seen too much happening in Gunjur right now. And then the salt intrusion in the mangrove ecosystem and estuaries, because the mangroves actually do well in brackish water. This means the water that is not very salty, but the water that is also not very fresh. So in between, mangroves do well in those kind of ecosystem. But in the event the sea level rise increased, and then the water from the sea flow to other areas, wetland areas that are actually fresh water. If we have too much salt water in those areas, then you'll find out that it will disturb the mangrove ecosystem because their growth will not be will be deterred, and then obviously the ecosystem also will be unsuitable for those kind of plant species that can do well in a brackish water or in a fresh water. So saltwater intrusion can affect the ecosystem, but also in the agricultural areas where people farm very close to water bodies in the wetlands. So in the event the sea level rise and then the salt water pulls the fresh water and then maybe happen to go into those lands that are actually cultivation areas for rice cultivation, the saltwater intrusion could also help. And infrastructural damage, we've seen that in, where is the example of infrastructural damage? I think in some areas like in the coastal areas, for example, if you see the British Embassy, where the British Embassy and the French Embassy is, there are areas that have actually been destroyed. Some houses have started collapsing. And if you look at Radio Seed is no longer there anymore. And that area also has been affected, has been fallen down. If you look at Palm Grove Hotel, Palm Grove also don't have a beach anymore. In fact, some of their infrastructures have started collapsing. So these are very good examples of how sea level rise and climate change can impact our coastal infrastructures as well. Next slide. Right, so this is a map of the Gambia coastal zone from Bunyadu Point in the north, Bunyadu Point here in the north, to Alahan River in Khartoum. These are the entire coastline of the Gambia. It's about 80 kilometers or 81 kilometers of coastline. And of course, we have some streams and wetlands along these areas. We have the settlements also, and then we have some coastal infrastructures also as well along all this coastline. Next slide. So this is an example. This is an old picture, but it's just showing like how important, how our coastal zone is very vulnerable to the impact of climate change, because our coastline is very low-lying. They call it low-lying coastal elevation. In fact, Gambia is one of the 10 countries that are going to be affected by impact of climate change in Africa. Gambia is one of the first 10 countries that are likely to be, that are going to be impacted by impact of climate change. So of course, along our coastline, we also have presence of mangroves, which some areas they are doing very well, but in some areas, mangroves have started dying. And unless we start to rehabilitate those areas and bring those mangrove ecosystem back, then our vulnerability to the impact of climate change will still remain. And then also, studies have indicated high vulnerability to climate change. Of course, like I said, a lot of study has been done by experts in the Gambia. And then all of these expert studies and research have identified that Gambia's coastline is very vulnerable to the impact of climate change. Next slide. Okay, so the impact of climate change to our coastal zone is the damage to the fisheries infrastructure and related activities. If you go to Bakau, some of the fish landing sites in Bakau, and then if you look at also in Brufut, and then you come down to Tangi and Gunjur, Sanyang, you know, some of these areas where we build fish landing, fishing infrastructures are going to be damaged, you know, when the sea level rise continued, because we are very, some of the areas are very less than 150 meters from the high water mark. Some of the fish landing sites are very close to the ocean, very, very close. So some of them don't even have a space where to build some fishing infrastructures, unless they go a little bit on the hinterland, which obviously very close to the housing. So in these areas, we are going to expect the impact of climate change is going to damage a lot of fisheries infrastructures. Also, inundation of the coastal land, the beaches and mangrove, like I mentioned before. We lost a lot of lands in the Gambia due to climate change. And then the mangrove also migrate inside. And then also the reduced fish catches will also increase because the more heat our ozones get, or the more warm our ozone get, it allows the fishes to go deeper. They swim deep because when the surface water of the ocean is hot, some fish species cannot bear that heat. So all they do is they go down. They go down and swim more in the deeper ocean to get the coolness. So that will obviously very hard for fishermen to catch some fishes because most of the fish species probably will run away, to hibernate, unless maybe the surface water becomes a little bit cooler that they can, adapt to. Also, the loss of fresh water, because some of our coastal areas, we know that we can drink from the well, but when climate change happens and the sea level rise continue to happen, some of these areas are going to be affected. This means that in Gunjur, in our vegetable gardens where our women can drink water, those areas will no longer be, be drinkable anymore because the seawater will actually, will intrude in the area. Of course, damage to the ecosystem and tourism. You all know 70% of the tourists that visit the Gambia are eco-tourists. These are the people who want to see our vegetation, they want to see our beaches, they want to see our wildlife. So when those infrastructures like the hotels, like we see in Senegambia and Kairaba Beach Hotel over the past years, their beaches have lost completely. And then, those hotels were so threatened, that they are going to lose their hotels because those are the two major hotels that, provide accommodation for tourists that visit the Gambia. So if we lost Kairaba Beach Hotel, we lost Senegambia. So you can imagine even Saraton Hotel that is in Brufut is also along the coastline, not very far from the high water mark. So all of this is going to have an impact on the tourism. So of course, the heavy infrastructural loss that's also connected to tourism, because a lot of our houses, some private houses, are also along the coastline. Next slide. Right, this is an old picture of Banjul. I think it's 2010 when we had a major flood in the Gambia. So you can see how Banjul was inundated at the time. So this was a major flood, and then the way things are going, we're going to see more flood going on in Banjul in the coming years because our coastline is getting more vulnerable, and then torrential rainfalls are happening everywhere, not just in the Gambia. So someday we might even have more rainfall than this. So this is in 2010. This was one of the major floods we have in Banjul. Next slide. Right, this one also is, this is the Banjul Cemetery in Christian and the Muslim cemetery before the coastal protection job was done. You can see this is a human skull. This is one of the cemeteries in Banjul. You can see how important how climate change is encouraging on the Gambia. But thank God, after this, the Gambia was able to spend over $20 million to do coastal protection work here. And then with the Dutch company Royal Haskoning. So before that, you can see on the other slide, some of the measures that we were using was using wire gauze and then put some rocks and boulders, to control the area from eroding. But the coastal intervention done by Royal Haskoning was able to intervene in this area. And thank God, now the cemeteries are safe right now. The museum is also safe coming around the State House. They're all kind of stable at the moment with the behind of Atlantic Hotel, sorry. But the Radio City is gone, and the Palm Grove Beach Hotel is also gone. Next slide. Right, so this is also before the coastal protection job was done. This is right in front of Kairaba Beach Hotel and Senegambia. So those days before the coastal protection was done, the erosion was coming in very fast. A lot of sandbag interventions have been done, but that did not slow down the waves, because the wave action around those areas are very high, then it's very, very strong. and that makes sure that the area was actually eroding very fast. But then what happened was when the coastal protection work was done in 2000, 150 meters of beach was provided for a sandy beach. So those days after the protection was done, we have about 150 meters of sandy beach of Skyraba Beach Hotel. But what after a couple of years, after 5 years, because they give a guarantee up to 15 to 20 years, but that did not work. After 5 years or so, the area becomes so eroded again that it went down up to less than 20 meters from the high water mark, or less than 20 meters from that 150 meters of sand. Because what happened is in the Gambia and Caraba area, the wave action is very strong. So when they did the coastal protection job, they did not put any strong mechanism in the water that will reduce the wave action, so that the water can, when the water comes down to the shore, it will be kind of reduced, but it did not reduce. So that actually taking away the sandy beach that was provided. But again, they are on another coastal protection right now. I think probably it's almost finished now. Or that was the $8 million US they got for adaptation fund. So these are old pictures before the coastal protection job. But now the area in Caraba Beach Hotel is better than this. Next slide. So the strategies that in view of the vulnerability of our coastline to the impact of climate change. So one of the strategies that is going to help us is the following: to increase education and awareness on the impact and consequences of climate change in the coastal zone. And this sensitization includes the program you are doing today, Ahmed. If Gambians listen to this video today, they will get to know about climate change. We need to get to schools and educate them. We need to go to the communities and educate them. Even our politicians are not very aware of climate change issues. So once a while, we need to educate these politicians, to know about the impact of climate change to our ecosystem. So we need to do mangrove replenishment, which obviously is happening. We have seen communities in Sankandi and also the Kombofoni Forestry Association, headed by Sekou Janko. And then also we have also seen other community-based organizations in Fonyi. They are also doing their best to restore these areas. And we also seen Parks and Wildlife recently. They also did mangrove restoration in the wetland areas. WAPSA also did some wetland restoration programs. We've also seen in Kartong, mangrove restoration is done. Also in Tambi wetlands, and also in Bone Road, and also Sitting Corner. All of these areas are being restored. So we need to continue doing this kind of thing. And then the other thing is the sand dune stabilization. Now, if you look at one of the slides before, you see these plants on the beach side. Malika fay mandiga kawla nyaadi amanka sora today, but in katara bada ka julo ka jamfuten sometimes ni tara no lo nyino lo fon ka lo sita barakora, exactly. So barakora, those kind of vegetation, they are actually helping to stabilize the soil. So most people don't know, but if you have those barakoras, a lot of them on the beach side, Abedauda, they don't have coastal erosion. It stabilizes the soil. So we need to plant those kind of barakoras a lot in our coastal areas, especially areas that Mialonko, coastal erosion is happening. Within a short period of time, you will see a very big change, in terms of that area. Also, we are alternative energy for fisheries-related activities that depend on the fuel wood. Yeah. Also, we have seen in most of the fish land sites where they are doing this fish smoking. They depend a lot on our vegetation cover. They depend on logs, firewood to smoke their fish. So imagine with all this money that Ministry of Fisheries and Gambia European Union have signed, for example, for this tuna to fish tuna in our water, they're getting 560,000 euro every year. So with that money, Ministry of Fisheries can improve the condition in our fish landing sites by coming with alternative energy, or buying boats and nets for a younger generation to involve into the fishing activities. So we need to look into that. Community forests is very important. like we've seen in Gunjur, in Bolomfenyoto. You guys did a lot of tree planting in Gunjur, and you did a lot of planting in Kartong. A lot of community-based organizations are doing. These community forests are very important for us. Like for Bolomfenyo, the importance of Bolomfenyo cannot be overemphasized. Looking at the entire, combo, apart from Burfoot, the forest in Burfoot, it's only in Burfoot and, Bolomfenyoto and a little bit of Dalaba in Kartong, that area, that you find this coastal community forest. So we need to make sure that we protect these areas very much and then conserve them. So riparian vegetational belt, that's the belt, the belt, actually the green belt, which obviously is very important, especially around the coastline, to maintain these green areas. Make sure they are protected and they're not destroyed. Next slide. Right, so basically this is talking about mangrove restoration, like some of the areas that where mangrove restoration was doing well. Unlike the tree planting, some of the trees that we plant in a year, they die. But in mangroves, mangroves have almost 90% success rate. Most of the mangroves that we plant, I'm not saying 100% of them survive, but at least 90% of mangroves, survive. So I think within a short period of time, if we engage in mangrove planting, then we will actually regenerate a lot of degraded areas within a short period of time. So the other side, this is just an example of some coastal protection measures that we have done in Senegal. Next slide. Okay, this is also in front of Senegambia Beach Hotel. This was after the coastal protection work. This was something, sea wall that was built by the hotels, So this was way back, and then it becomes exposed again. So in this area at the time, this was less than 20 meters from the hotel. Actually, this you can see in some areas where the tourists used to lie down on their beaches, it's all gone. So this was a protection they did. So that happened to exposed, And then, but thank God, like I said, the new project has actually done good work on that side. So this was a little bit old photo. Next slide. So this was another sandbag intervention that we tried in 2011, 2012, before the intervention starts, because we see this happen in Senegal. During one of our study tour, we went to Senegal. We have seen they are using some sandbags in some areas. So we were trying to try this sandbag initiative in front of Kairaba Beach Hotel to see if it will help. Next slide. So now our priorities right now, coming to almost to the end of the presentation, beach nourishment and stabilization. Nourishment, like I said, is pumping the sand from the ocean inside the deep ocean, and you're pumping it to the shoreline. This is what the Netherlands people did to bring the 150 meters of coastline around Senegambia end. So establishment and rehabilitation of protected wetland areas. Some of the wetland areas in our combos are very important, especially in the Tambi wetlands. But we are seeing people are encouraging in these wetlands, building houses in the wetlands. They are even draining them. So this have to stop so that it can help us to contain some of the flood water that actually, when we have too much water in our country, the wetlands plays those important role, because the wetlands acts as a sponge. They absorb flood waters, contain them. So livelihood diversification for the vulnerable communities, that's also very important. We need to diversify our livelihood option so that we don't only depend on fishing, for example, or we don't only depend on rice growing. In case those areas that we depend for rice growing are no longer suitable for rice growing, then we have alternative livelihood that we can, depend on for our survival. Education and communication on climate issues, that's also very important. This is even at school level, at community level, at government level. So we need to educate, we need to communicate, sensitize the people, because the more informed, the more communities are informed of environmental issues, they are more likely to help you in protecting the environment. Next slide. So in conclusion, Ahmed, the Gambia government in adaptation, we have no choice, but we have to adapt because the Gambia ecosystem is changing. Our coastal line is very vulnerable to the impact of climate change. And then, also as an obligation, we are a signatory to United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. So therefore, we have to abide by the international obligations. And also, our national climate committee is already in place, so that committee should be active. And then, we engage the people. We need to declare declaration of protected areas and forests in the coastal area. Yeah, like some areas that are not protected right now, they don't have the protective status. We need to make sure these areas are protected so that they can continue to play important part in mitigating climate change. Rigorous information collection on climate change, that's obviously because without research, we will not know, how impact, we are going to be affected by climate change. So when it comes to scientific information, we depend on data. So we need to be there to collect those data. Next slide. So that's the references of some of the audios, some of the references, like I said, about the vulnerability studies that have been done, and some of the definitions that I was able to use for this presentation, they come from these references. Next. Right, so Ahmed, that's the end of the presentation. That's a quick one, but that's basically, yes.
Yeah, Famara, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I don't know, and also for making us scared and also making us understand actually what climate change and what we need to do. I think we have our work cut out. We can only continue to sensitize. And as I said, when you go to the Gambia, you will know definitely you are making a big impact on policymakers. Because you look at Gambia now, the opposition or the voice of dissent or senate is all coming from the social media.
Absolutely.
You will not hear an opposition member, parliamentarian, coming out and perhaps on environmental challenges facing us. It's all about us. Next week, inshallah, the Bamboo Foundation are going to Kiang, and also week after they're going to Mayamba to plant. These are some of the things our politicians should be leading. Going back to their consequences. Organizing these kind of events. And also we see Kiang inshallah, I think next week as well, they're going into this bamboo, no, the mangrove plantation. I think this is one area also combo we need to get involved in, because you look at the Bolonfenyo recently, it suffered a lot, and a lot of mangrove died. In fact, from the beginning of when these Chinese people came, they started dumping their waste. A lot of mangrove disappeared at the mouth of the lagoon, of which are not replaced. So it's good to know that they have high survival rate. I think this is something we will continue. You look at the sea level rise. Let's talk about this in Banjul. Do you think Gambia have the capacity to resist this? Because if you look at 0.5 meters above sea level, so sea level rise of like 1 meter, half of Banjul will be submerged. Do you think Gambia should be thinking of contingency plan, probably moving that capital from now? Because we might not have the capacity, because the 20 million just to do 150 meters from high water marks. So, if you want to do all Banjul belt with that, it's going to be very expensive. What do you think? What are you? Don't you think we should be thinking of moving that capital now?
Yeah, actually, according to the presentation that my Toma did, Famara Drammeh did, I think he did a very good research recently, and then based on the surveys that they conducted in Banjul, I think the majority of the people are in the view to move out of Banjul, I believe, if I don't misquote his research. But it is very good that we consider that, because obviously Banjul is very vulnerable, and then we are going to be, the capital city will be hardly impacted by climate change when the sea level rise thing. So we need to start looking about option B, moving the capital city, or maybe at least allow people to move out, and then Banjul can just remain a commercial capital, And then because where the people are, because people are actually also increasing, to the vulnerability of the area, to the impact of climate change, So because the mangrove ecosystem that's supposed to defend the capital city is dying very fast, and then, which is partly due to pollution, and then some other, activities going on there, which is infrastructural, development. So if we don't slow down all of this, and it's definitely going to have an impact on Banjul. So I think that should be in the plans to move the capital or relocate the people outside Banjul. That should be a contingency plan in case it happens.
Yeah, thank you very much. This will be my final point I raised. But before that, Ablai Sani has been working from the beginning, and he said, Famara, thank you. And finally, he said, Famara, I'm so proud of you. Ablai Sani.
Ablai Sani, okay. Thank you, Ablai.
Yeah, so causes of climate change. You mentioned burning of fossil fuels.
Yes.
Clearance, forest cover, and bushfires. All these three are endemic in the Gambia.
Absolutely.
What do you think? Yes, all these three are endemic in the Gambia. So what can we do to solve it?
Yeah, that's true. The government just need to take drastic measures, like we're seeing, especially when it comes to bushfire. We see community participation is there, but there are very unscrupulous people that are helping on setting bushfire every year because they want to get access to the thick areas of the vegetation or areas that are already vegetated. So now communities made their bylaws. It's frustrating when somebody set up a bushfire, the person, and then they cannot apply the law. They take it to the alcalde, but the alcalde will not do anything. Or the regional forestry officer is aware, but he will not escalate the issue. So we need to take a law enforcement, because this is one of the big things that is weakening. It's a weakness, obviously. We don't enforce the law. We might have a law to stop bushfires. And we all know how how the damage that the bushfire does to our ecosystem, but there is no enforcement of the law. You can remember last year in the anti-forest fire campaign, somebody was setting a bushfire, and then somebody's heap of groundnuts were all burned down. You remember that? Yeah. So, but thank God, at the time was able to do something. They were able to find somebody. But you see, it's all down to communication. We need to educate our people, but at the same time, we need to apply the laws. So when it comes to vegetation clearing, we are seeing that. In fact, right now, NEA should be on top of all the real estate companies. Wherever they got land, before they clear the land, let them make sure they go through environmental impact assessment. Let them pay for all the trees that they are cutting down on their land. The land is what they bought, but the vegetation does not belong to them. It belongs to the state. So if you buy 100 by 100 meters and you find that area is a vegetated area, before you come down and bulldoze the area, consult the forestry department, consult the National Environment Agency, get a clearance. So that if you cut down those 100 trees, you will pay for that 100 trees, and then we'll plant those 100 trees somewhere in Gunjur, that the ecosystem will go back. So this means the vegetation you are clearing, you are actually paying back somewhere else, because that vegetation has been there for many years before you bought that land. So you cannot just come one day and clear all that land and you just go scot-free. So I think we need to do away with that, because all of this counts in our national vegetation cover.
Yeah, Farmer, I think this is one law we all need sensitization. I don't think most Gambians are aware that all trees belongs to the states. You see people, once they bought a place, the first thing they do, they take the ass. But this, as you rightly said, these estate agents, they just bring the bulldozers.
Right.
Not only the trees, but they graze all the topsoil. So even if they develop the place and you want to do landscape gardening, you might not have any surface, top surface soil that is suitable. I think this is one, we need sensitization. And as you say also, Gambia, our laws are fantastic, but implementing them is a big problem. I don't know how we're going to. We need a very, very serious government, to change these things around. But we have to continue to sensitize. And also, you mentioned our weakness to this climate change. But yet, again, the sign has been mined, continuously from our coastlines. You know, and most of our West African neighbors stop this. What do you think, you know, we can do to reverse this?
Yeah, actually, we have. It's a very expensive because, like you're saying, we can get sand from deeper seas and then pump it on the shoreline wherever it's degraded. But that's very expensive because you need to do a bathymetric survey to know where the sand is actually located and how much quantity of sand that is available in the deep ocean, so that you can pump it to the shoreline. So we can continue to depend on sand for construction, but we have to regularly bring back those sands in the deeper sea to replenish those areas, which is a very expensive. The other thing will be to find alternative to sand for construction. Some of them are using this stone dust, like we see in the ecotourism camp that is built in Kartong. They build their blocks, bricks from those kind of dust, you know. So gravel dust, you know, you can use the gravel dust with little bit of cement. You can make some very good quality bricks out of it, which we can use for construction as well again. But otherwise, if we don't find alternative, our beach areas will be degraded, and this is why Senegambia was very quickly eroded. Because you know what, when you take sand from Gunjur, right? What the ozone normally do is it will definitely naturally it will replace the area. So what it normally does is those areas that were highly eroded in Senegambia, that 150 meters of beach that was actually eroded, those sands all went back into the beach. And then what you know is normally it will go somewhere in Gunjur and dump that sand over there. So it's the same sand in Gunjur that we are using again after some time when they are replenished. But right now they stop mining in Batakunko. So in the next few years or so, if you go to Batakunko, you'll find the area is slowly coming back. Okay, it's slowly coming back because those areas now is no more mining activities there. But those sands are coming from somewhere else. It's either from Senegambia area or either from Gunjur area that is actually coming to around Batakunko area to stabilize. So we must find an alternative. We must control this mining sector. You know, geology is not controlling the mining sector at all, because one, they are not going through the environmental impact study like we have seen, you know, with this Gaj company that is mining in Sanyang, and they want to mine in Gunjur, which you guys managed to stop, and then they want to come to, also in Brufut, you know. So we can see that, you know, mining has to be controlled because there are conditions, there are environmental conditions that you put into consideration. You should not go very deep. And then the topsoil, if you remove the topsoil, for example, you should bring it back so that that area can be used again for other activities like agriculture, you know. So, but these people will just mine and just go leave the area very unhealthy, and then there will be a lot of ditches and big holes, and they will not even seal them up, cover them up. So that's a big issue.
Yeah, Famara, thank you very much. And just to give you another encouragement, another good news, and I told you it's been frustrating, but these days I think the message is getting across. Just last week, the elders of Kartong also rejected this mining company from mining anywhere in Kartong. So that's another latest good news.
Wow, that's
and
very
also, yeah, this deeper technology you are mentioned that they can go in the deep sea and mine sand is going to be start in Gambia very, very soon. I know the guys who are involved, they did all the survey. It's going to be around Denton Bridge. I think they say there is enough sand there to serve Gambia for 5 years. But Famara, why our politician cannot also think, like if we have a say a train line, you see these cargo trains in Europe where you have like hundreds of wagons, you know, carry this heavy load. For example, there is a lot of sand in the Sahara. You know, why can we export,
exactly.
sand from the Sahara Desert? Like if Senegal, you know, collaborate with Gambia and also maybe other neighboring countries. They make a train line where they can go and scoop this land from Sahara Desert. Or maybe it's not suitable for construction. I don't know. Maybe there are technical issues. But it's so obvious. I don't know why they're not employing these kind of options.
Yeah, that's a very good option too as well, because places like Cape Verde, Cape Verde actually, you know, they have this lot of this stone, and I think some of their stones are coming from Senegal are exporting some of the stones from Cape Verde Island. So, they don't have too much, sand over there. I think they are exporting some of the stones. There's beton. I don't know how they call it. Beton, they beton. They actually, I think they have a lot of them in Cape Verde, I'm sure, somewhere. So there's sometimes they export it out, and then
Senegal is exporting. Senegal also have a lot of it. In fact, that's where it is coming. Is very expensive if only people building roads and also story buildings go for it. But Senegal is exporting it a lot. So Mauritania also, if we can collaborate and maybe have a tram line from Mauritania to it's not far. That's not a big distance from Sahara Desert. But maybe it's not suitable for construction. I don't know. Anyway, thank you once again for your time. And Salmina Job is saying, yes, fam, I recommend use of alternative building materials of various origins. Yeah, I think this is the way forward. But with this imminent mining of sand at the bottom of the sea, that might also have some environmental problems. I don't know, but I think that will save us a lot. Thank you. I really appreciate your time. And for the viewers, next week, this time, Lamin Tamba will present, but I believe Famara will be here because he's talking about solid waste. This is another major problem for our country. Thank you.
Thank you, Ahmed. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Falindir balle bina sotola alka television o jube nyame escaf Gambia ye DTT decoder kutamal lenati dameng alse GRTS QTV Star TV Paradise TV ani MTA be soto min na natalol anin kuma kangol be senearing lew andung ite fenjola DTT decoder akesan dalasi wuli fula ani dalasi tanani dronga andung ibe sola karikilina ye bantala bankol la channel jama jube andung ite kodi wo kodi jola ni la fita ka continue ka min siata ye channel tan woro la jube katake ye subscribe wolom kari wo kari ibe dalasi keme lulu ani dalasi tan donne jola ise football league channelol be jube news african movies telenovela film dima balu musical ani cartoon pour dindingol alta DTT decoder sang escaf la showroom mimbe Senegambia wotumo dream park be dame warang ila agentol minul be banko kan ali kumandi 446 1060 446 1061.
Fitness Center Body Max. See fire for body, and if you follow me, go now. Enjoyment go kill 'em. Baby girl, you bad, girl the way you whine. I demand over you, girl. I demand over you, girl. Say you are my woman, my superwoman. I demand over you, girl. I demand over you, girl. she follow me go now, enjoyment go kill 'em.
Moro
Ibanya
mbijan do
ko benya
bakandro
ko ngalla janna kibaro moy kalka sola bagaso wafu
ka fontelle ko solar enterprise fo fendi nabe dendi solar la fannala la solar la bundal ndella ko do kuwo ke mole janka solar joran kendo natala dum min nata na ko fanandiya birin Gambia jam fo Gambia e bantala nga bagasol samba be ton ka do ku kendo be ke mo be ninga do ko ke momo ndi en ka sanji kilin garantie dilale nyin kama ko la do ko lanno si waran ni tema
bagasi falle
bagaso min bijay fofe nabe dendi sola la bundala la sola la fannala a bagaso sifa be bijay lightning and pumping system ndella fanan ko ke mole min be dendi na ko ni dandal ni kordal ka diodi alla nin ka lampo fanan sika ka dialla wo pumping wolbe dendi gadi non ni ku kotal ni la ji ko ni la fama bela lightning wala dimbani ku kotal danno sola enterprise tin ko la kali
fam sola
fofe be dendi sola la hajo la janne be loro
wato tente bul bagasol tan
adum fana be ku fula la leje bunda fula fana be mbulle fan ka bonan dami anin dula ba fula safonya America ni Europe na fan ka bana wolta dum doron no moto min ka fenken do na te sola la bagasol kana te jëm banko kanja
abanta bagasol tan
ngata.
For more information, call 7171-998, 7171-998, Kunju Fitness Center Body Max.
Blessed with the mighty Atlantic Ocean, fertile agricultural lands, and a strategic geographic location that gives an opportunity for a lot of people to explore and get into the business. Gunjur and the Gambia at large has experienced numerous shutdowns when it comes to economy, and especially this COVID time. Please join us as we embark on a journey where we explore different areas of our business sector, from agriculture, fisheries, and small business enterprises. Gunjur Business is in short called Gunjur Biz. This will be a platform that we will use to explore different business opportunities, especially for young people. We'll bring you on Gunjur Online all the business topics that is related to financing, operations, marketing. And we will use this platform to invite experts from different sectors of the Gambian economy and give tips and have a broader analysis of the general business sector. This will give us an opportunity to be able to discuss in a broader detail how businesses are affected when it comes to our environment, our natural resources being exploited by other people, but also how we can tap into the opportunities and also access capital, which is very crucial for the success of the businesses. But not only that, we won't stop at accessing capital. You know what else we're going to do? It's about the little operational processes that are needed in our business culture to build up cultures that's going to be successful. And that's going to be, most importantly, what? It's going to be sustainable for the success of the business. So we can transfer wealth. We can also transfer skills from one person to another to be able to live in a community that is thriving, a community that businesses, private sector, individual businesses nurture entrepreneurship and reward them. So please join me every week on Gunjur Online as we delve into all these areas of discussions when it comes to business success. This is your host, Abubakar of Gunjur Online. Thank you for joining us, and I'll see you.